Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and today I have a little bit of a different episode from what we've been doing recently on the interview episodes. We've been talking a lot about breath work and somatic healing and lots of different stuff like that. And today we're going to dive into something that is equally important and impactful and extremely so, really, and a little bit more on the practical side, which is estate planning. So today I have my friend Patricia De Fonte of De Fonte Law PC, where they do estate planning with heart. So important. We're going to get to why that matters in a moment. And gosh, Patricia, we've known each other for like 3 or 4
3 or
years
4 years, yeah.
at this
It's been a
point,
while.
right? And just connect over and over again. We've kind of been building our firms at the same pace, launched around like similar time frame and everything, I think. So it's been such a pleasure to get to know you and to see your process and see how your practice has grown. And I'm super excited to talk to you about all things estate planning, why it's so important, and to really bring home just what a integral piece this is to the financial planning process that I use, but also just for anyone. We all need to have this stuff in place. So, Patricia, thank you for being here. And tell the audience a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I will say that kind of keeping in your theme of somatic healing and wellness, integrating your life into your practice, nothing will make you sleep better than a fully funded estate plan. Knowing that you have 100% taken care of yourself, your minor children, the people who are counting on you, the relief and happiness that my clients express once their documents are signed. I've been a lawyer for a long time, and it wasn't until I started practicing estate planning that my clients literally would pick me up and twirl me around. And so if you think that you can't love a lawyer, I invite you to engage in estate planning with a lawyer who takes it seriously.
It's so good. It's so true. It's one of those things that people don't really like quantify the weight of that until it's lifted and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I knew that I was stressed out about this, but I didn't know like the level of chronic stress that goes with not having your estate plan
Yes.
ready."
Yes. And it's really important for people to recognize you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know who's getting what because you don't know the implications of giving certain assets to certain people, whether based on where they live or based on their age or based on that specific asset. You may really be stressed out about not knowing who to put in charge. Well, if you work with an estate planning lawyer who's going to ask you all the right questions, they're going to help you discover the right people and move you away from choosing your cousin who's a hedge fund manager who probably can't serve because their boss won't let them, or your mom, but she lives in England and you need a US resident who resides in the US. And so a really good estate planning lawyer can help you clear out a lot of the noise and then get down to, well, what are the real practical possibilities? And let's work from there. And so I always tell clients your intake documents do not need to be perfect. If the only thing we get from you is your data and the data on your children, and you leave the rest blank because you're not sure who should serve in any capacity, it's okay. We don't need you to try to figure out the whole story. Our job as lawyers and counselors is to help you write the story.
Mm.
Oh, but let me tell, so why should anybody listen to me about
Yeah,
this?
why
Okay.
should anyone listen to you? Tell us.
Yeah, right. So I've been a lawyer for over 20 years and I've been an estate planning attorney for about 8 years. I've had my own practice for 7 years. I have an LLM, which is a master's in estate planning, probate, and trust admin. I have been awarded the super lawyer designation, which is peer review in California. I think this will be year 4. My firm keeps winning best of the Bay and we don't lobby for it. And every year I'll get a call from a colleague saying, "Congratulations." And I'll say, "Thanks for what?" And it turns out that we won again.
Oh.
The one that we're most proud of, though, is we have a torch award for ethics from the local Better Business Bureau in San Francisco. And so that one is really meaningful. Wasn't completely happy when they thought it was funny that they were giving it to a lawyer. I know what our reputation is,
Yeah.
but I really hold that up as, an award for my profession and for my colleagues. There are a lot of people who are practicing estate planning who really mean it and take it very, very seriously.
Mm. Oh, yes. And so from my perspective, the thing that I wanted to really like bring into the conversation today is that, when I'm on the financial planning side, being a certified financial planner, part of my job is to help see the big picture financially in all of our like main areas. And, that includes what is your cash position? What are your investments doing? It includes what do you want, for your kids for education. It includes insurance. It includes um, estate planning as one of the core pillars of what we look at. And one thing that I know from, being in this industry for a long time and, talking with a lot of other people, other advisors, a lot of people who say they are financial advisors or financial planners, I'm putting that in quotes, are not held to the standard that a CFP is held
Mhm.
to look over everything. And that's not to say that people who aren't a CFP also don't do a good job because there are wonderful financial planners. But estate planning is one of those pieces where, as a financial advisor, I don't get paid on that, right? There's no compensation to me for looking at an estate plan. So a lot of people, when they go to, the advisors that do quote unquote free financial planning or anything like that, they're not talking about their estate. They're not going deep into like, what do you have in place right now to make sure that if you pass away, when you pass away, because we will, but also if you pass away before you expect to,
Sure.
do you know the flow of what's going to happen with all of your assets? And is it going to be as I want to say is easy, but when you think about the grieving process that people are going through when they lose someone, especially a provider, a breadwinner, anything like that, there's so much stress and grief in that process that when we have the estate plan really buttoned up, really um, fleshed out, it's such a kindness to everyone who's left behind, right? And who's still here. I wouldn't say left behind, everyone who's still here, earthside, that
Earthside.
has to pick up the pieces, right? And keep moving on with life. When we have ambiguity, if there's no estate plan in place, if everything's like really difficult to pick up the pieces and move on from, that just prolongs the grieving process and makes everything so much more difficult. So I want to hear from you as well. Like, what does it mean estate planning with heart to you? What is all of that encompass for you?
Sure. So I should point out that I can't give any legal advice on this. And so we're only speaking in generalities. And I'm a California lawyer, and California is a weird place for all the good reasons that you see in all the movies and on TV, but also because we're a community property state. We have weird rules around real estate. And so some of the things I say today may not resonate across the country, but the basics should be about the same.
Right.
Um, you know, some people will say, "I don't care. I'll be dead. So what does it matter?" So here's why estate planning really matters for everybody who's 18 and over. Once you're an adult, nobody has the right in most jurisdictions to sign your name to a tax return, get out of a lease with your landlord, contact your employer to get your disability payments, right? It feels like there's no privacy in this world, but believe me, when someone else starts trying to act for you to take money out of your bank account to pay for your health care, they're going to get blocked, right? Because there are way too many laws getting in the way. So if you don't care what happens to your stuff after you're dead, I hope you deeply care what happens to you while you are alive and your own well-being. Because if you don't take action, if you don't give the right people the authority using the right kinds of documents, then hopefully it's your loved ones and not just somebody who wants to control you, will have to go to a court and get permission from a judge. And so a big part of estate planning is what happens if I bump my head? What happens if I have a stroke? What happens if I'm in a temporary coma? Who can act for me? Um, Another part of estate planning is what happens to the people that I leave behind, right? And it might be minor children. It might be a special needs adult. It might be a spouse. It might be just other adults who are doing great and you're not worried about them at all, right? Your adult children. But you really always have to consider that if you don't take any action, the way that they receive their inheritance, it's all just going to be public record. Everybody's going to know, everybody who's interested is going to know how much they're getting and when they're getting it. And this leaves them in a terrible position. All this stuff winds up on the dark web and there are bad actors everywhere. Those of you, think about if you've bought a piece of real estate, all that weird mail that you got about home warranties and everything looked really official. It's like that when someone dies. You're going to get a lot of that kind of spammy email, a lot of phone calls from people who quote unquote want to help you. None of these people want to help you. They would like to help themselves to your assets and they would like to grift your family. And so, estate planning is you have to address what about me, protect yourself. You have to address what about the people I'm leaving behind? How do we make sure that you have control from the grave, that you're protecting their privacy, that if probate is expensive where you live, that you're avoiding that you are honoring the specific people in your life, because it might be that you have 3 adult kids, 2 of them are great with money, and one of them, not so much.
Mhm.
So do you leave them their gifts the same way? It might be that you have 1 home and 5 kids. Do you leave that home to all of them and figure they're going to buy each other out, which triggers transfer tax and income tax and maybe gift tax? It's a mess. Or do you really want to think through this house has been in our family for a few generations? I'm going to give it to 1 kid so that Thanksgiving can continue to happen. And so, how do I, with the rest of my estate, explain this and make it right to the other kids? Because at base, estate planning with heart means that we are asking you a lot of questions about yourself, your family, your loved ones, who makes you nervous and who you feel responsible for, and making sure that we're honoring all of those relationships. We're trying to eliminate the weirdos from getting in. And any gift that you're leaving, we're setting the beneficiary up for success. If it's minor children, it's not enough to draft a plan that says minor children will get their money when they become adults, a third, a third, a third when they're 25, 30, and 35.
Mhm.
Okay. So they're 40 when you die, which means they're getting all of it at once. Avalanche of money. Are they okay? I don't know. My parents are still alive. I can't imagine if I had lost my mother when I was 40. I just had 2 children. That money definitely would be gone by now. What if they are 20 and then all this money is growing for 5 years and there's all this tax associated with that money and we're forcing that distribution at 25? Well, what if that person's receiving RSUs? And so now we have a taxable event that we can't do anything about with the RSUs and another taxable event that we can't do anything about with the distribution from the trust. And so who's happy? The IRS. Who among us wants to go to a party for the IRS? Not me. I do not want to go to a party for the IRS.
Yeah, that's everything that you just mentioned. Like you can think about how niche each piece is. And at the same time, every single one of us has something like that, right? Something in either our family structure or our assets or our work or business, right? That's going to be its own thing, right? That's going to be different from a standard template of, what it looks like to deal with a probate process or an estate. Um, Trustee process, all of that. And so, like, no matter where you're at, there's something, there's something unique about your situation. That's what I have found to be true in working with hundreds of clients over the years. And one of the things that I wanted to also say is that, like, when I am when I am starting with a client in the financial planning process, asking if they have estate documents in place, it's actually even before I start working with someone, it's literally in the questionnaire for a sales call. Like I ask, "Do you have estate documents? And if so, do you know the last time they were updated?" And most clients, most people that come in the door either don't have anything in place
Sure.
or it was drafted, 15, 20 years ago. Family situation is totally different now. It's like basically like this is a useless document at that
Let's talk
point.
about these plans that were drafted 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. If you're talking to someone and they said, "Oh, we did that ages ago," you can say to them, "I am so happy to hear this. And when is the last time you spoke with your estate planning attorney and reviewed your documents with them in full?" Because really, those documents should be reviewed in full with the client and the lawyer in a meeting together every 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
Why? Because statistically, something will have changed. And maybe it's the people named in the plan. Maybe it's the assets related to the plan. I see so many old trusts that are completely empty because people have not kept up with the title changes and the beneficiary designation changes. Maybe it's the law. Here in California in the last 3 years, we had really big changes to way real estate can be inherited, what the impacts are.
Mm.
And then, of course, Congress with the Secure Act, that was a huge change. And so we don't know what a judge in a small town in our jurisdiction is going to do. We certainly have no idea what the voters are going to do. And we really cannot even take a guess as to what Congress might do. So it's really important to sit down and make sure that your plan reflects the best practices and also the most recent law. And for anybody who has a trust that is dated before 2012, you have a ticking time bomb in your trust. And you absolutely have to go and see a lawyer. You probably have an old AB structure in there because it
Mhm.
used to be that if death taxes were due, they were due on the death of the first spouse. And that's not true anymore. It's an it is for two US citizens, a billionaire can die and leave their spouse all the billions, no taxable event under the federal scheme. Some states are a little bit different, but that didn't used to be the case. And if you don't revise that trust, you're going to create tax problems either for a surviving spouse or for the next tier of beneficiaries after that spouse dies.
Yeah, I have a client who that was, they had their estate documents and first trust drafted when, they had an AB trust at that time. And, death taxes were, I think it was around $600,000 is when they would kick in. Right. And so that was when things were originally drafted. Once things shifted and now it's like 13, 14 million per person right now. Right. And then, like you said, when it pours over and then the second spouse dies and it's $28 million, right? Suddenly, this is a very different scenario. Estate
It's
taxes
a
are very,
very
very different.
different scenario because imagine that everything that you inherit from your spouse now has to go into an irrevocable trust with all of the associated taxes and restrictions. This is generally not what married people want to be dealing with, right?
Mm-mm.
And also, please, if you lose your spouse, you have to see a lawyer within 30 days. If a
Ooh.
client calls you and says, "I lost my spouse," you have to get them to an estate planning lawyer within 30 days. It doesn't mean they immediately need to get to work, but I have met so many people in the last year where one spouse died and the other one, thinking they had a trust, thought they didn't have to do anything. There are so many things that need to
Mhm.
be done with an estate planning lawyer, with a CPA, and with a financial advisor. Also, with insurance brokers, there is a mountain of work that needs to be done. And within 30 days, the client needs to be in contact with the right kind of trust administration lawyer, the right kind of probate lawyer, whatever it might be, to start teeing up the deceased spouse's estate to maximize the benefits for the surviving spouse. A
Mhm.
trust is not something that you do and then you throw under the bed and then the kids will find it later.
Right.
You have to keep up with it.
Yes. Yeah. That that sentiment of like making it a part of your review is for me again like I think of my clients who, we go through beneficiary
Oh yeah.
designations, right? Like I say that's the front line of defense, right? If anything can have a beneficiary designation so that it goes directly, like do not pass go, just go straight to spouse, right? Or go straight to the beneficiary. It's a blessing and a curse if you have them titled incorrectly, or if you don't have any beneficiaries listed, right? Then we have an issue.
Or if the
Um,
beneficiary is a minor, or if the beneficiary qualifies as a special needs individual, and you giving them any amount of money would strip them of all of their social benefits. Now
mhm,
you've destroyed someone's life. And if it's to a minor, and this is really common, oh, well, we have life insurance policies. We've named each other as the primary and the kids as the contingent. Okay, so let's go to the worst case scenario. And now the kids are the beneficiaries. Who decides what happens to the money? A judge.
mhm,
Which judge? I don't know. And is this judge rational? I don't know. Did the judge have a good day? I don't know. The judge could decide to put it all in a lockbox until the children are 25. The judge could decide to just give it to the person that the judge is going to appoint as guardians. And does that person have umbrella insurance? Is that money protected in any way? I don't know. And so the beneficiary designations are, I think they provide a lot of false comfort.
mm,
An estate plan is the core. And all of the money should be running through a trust because you can't be sure of who you're actually leaving the money to. Anybody can become a special needs person. Anybody can all of a sudden owe creditors a ton of money. And if you're just leaving them the money, well, is that now accessible to creditors? If
mm,
you float the money through a trust, you can put some restrictions around it as to what the money can be used for. And hopefully, this will very much depend state to state how much asset protection, how much creditor protection you get by keeping the money in a trust. But I know that if you just leave a bank account to Susan, zero protection,
right,
none.
right. So when we are looking, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, my main audience here being mainly entrepreneurs and business owners. Um, this sense of like what's different, what's special, right? Because
Sure.
we're so special. Business owners, we're so special. We're a
We're so
special breed.
special.
Um, but and at the same time, we really do have some extra stuff that we need to be considering when we're looking at estate planning. I have a pair of clients who, one is in a partnership. So he has a partner in his business. And one of the things we've been talking about recently is key person insurance.
Yeah.
What happens if one of you passes away, one partner, they both have wives. And so does your wife or does his wife want to be involved in the business? For my clients, she was like, no. No, I do not. I do not want to be involved in making any decisions about that. I would just like to be paid out for your portion, your half of the business. Um, but that there's so much planning that goes
Yeah.
into that. So tell us a little bit more. Yeah, like especially for business owners, people in partnerships or not, whatever the structure, like what from
Sure.
your perspective.
Sure. So for any estate plan, there should be a team approach. There should be an estate planning attorney, a financial advisor, insurance brokers, if you have a business, your corporate counsel. Please do not use online platforms to create your entities. Please do not do that. Especially if you're assuming that you're going to get asset protection that way. You're not going to. Please don't use those. Please work with a lawyer. So when we're thinking about estate planning and a business owner, so I'm a business owner, right? And so I need to think about, if I look at my durable power of attorney, if I look at the terms of my trust, what authority am I giving to a third party to operate as me as relates to my business? Should my spouse have the authority to do anything related to my business? So there's should, and then there's does my spouse want to? And then there's can my spouse? So if we think about lawyers and doctors and anyone else who owes their client a really high duty of privacy, and only another licensed professional is supposed to, and their employees are supposed to be able to see those files, do your documents permit your person to appoint someone who is actually qualified, that
Mm.
would actually be able to manage the business, wind down the business, sell the business? What is supposed to happen? Um, so that's critical. So your power of attorney and your trust should each have really specific language related to allowing the right type of authorized person to get in there and do those things. If you are in business with other people, you need to have a succession plan. What
Mhm.
happens if you bump your head? You're not coming back to work. What happens when you die to your share of the business? And of course, I love insurance because it resolves so many problems, right? It provides that liquidity, but sometimes it's bigger than that. Sometimes we're worried about the employees. Sometimes we're worried about, well, there's this business, but it owns all of this intellectual property. And so is it enough to buy a spouse out, or does a spouse now become just like a silent partner where they're still sharing in the growth, because it's not always appropriate to just buy someone out? And how do
Mhm.
you do the valuation? All of this is sticky, and if you do nothing, then if you have an untimely death or incapacity, you've thrown your business partners into chaos, your employees into chaos, your clients into chaos, and your family into chaos. And so I know it's fun and exciting to start a business, and your focus is grow, go, yes, build, create. And I have to ask you to slow down. I have to ask you to slow down and get your estate planning lawyer, maybe the CPA for your business, and your estate planning lawyer and your corporate counsel in a room together, because we have to make sure that we're hitting all of the points. We have to make sure that we're doing all of the issue spotting across the disciplines so that you have a
Mm.
plan that's actually going to work.
Oh, that's
One
so
thing,
yeah, go ahead.
just one last thing. Often, so I'm in California, I'm in a community property state. And what I see a lot of is people create businesses with their friends, with their colleagues, and they don't want their spouses to have an interest in that business. And so they have the spouse sign a little one paragraph waiver that says, I release all right and title to my spouse's interest in this business. That's not going to work.
Mm.
You so you might need a family law attorney to do a prenup or a postnup, because if you really want to be the only one who owns your business, you have to take some very expensive affirmative steps with a family law attorney in a community property state to make sure that you can actually own this on your own. Because otherwise, just because only your name is on it, meaningless. And who does that hurt? Your family, your business partners, your clients, right? And so you can't just think about, oh, the business is doing great. We have to look under the hood and really plan for the worst case scenario, which is not what business owners want to do. It's not what I want to do as a
Mm.
business owner.
Yeah, that's I mean, insurance and estate planning are the 2 pieces that people that of all the things, that it's not the fun part, right? Quote unquote "fun part."
It
It's
can
the
be.
part, right? We that's the thing we can it's perceived as like, I don't
Yeah.
wanna think about that. I don't wanna think about my death. I don't wanna think about not being here. Are you in a room with your spouse and you're contemplating what would happen, right? And there are tears and it can be hard but when we don't look at it, when we don't like you said, if you just are like, "I'm just not gonna look at that right now," I love the way you put it that you're throwing everything else into chaos,
Yeah.
is what truly, truly happens, and it's so much to recover from on the other side when it could be so much simpler, right? If business partners and spouses and friends are just able to just grieve rather than grieve and sort through so much
Right.
chaos, right?
I mean,
Like
anytime someone dies, there's a mountain of work that has to be done, right? We're going to marshal the assets. We have to do a final tax return. We have to pay off creditors that we can't wiggle out of not paying. There are all these things that need to be done. And that's whether you die with no documents with like a simple will or with a beautifully crafted trust. These things have to happen. How long it will take, how organized it will be, how much court involvement, how public it will be, these are things that you can control. And then you can control how people are getting their money. In our trusts, so inherited money hurts. And 33% of people who inherit lose it all within 3 years. That's a statistic that I've come
Wow.
across. Why? Because nobody wants money that they've inherited. They want their person back, right? It's never like in the movies where it's some aunt you've never heard of from another country who leaves you $250,000. That just never happens. It's always someone that you love. And so the tendency is to give the money away, or people think, oh, well, you just got this big inheritance. Maybe you could give me a small amount, and then the money is gone. The way we draft our trusts is they start off with their well being provisions, and we didn't write them. I adopted them from a really terrific advisor I know in DC, and he knows I use them, where we affirmatively state we love our children and we want them to self actualize. And we want them to have a good sense of well being, which means using the money in a way that is productive, getting out and having a rich life, not being afraid of their money. And so, how do we support this when we get into the technical part of the trust? The trustee can distribute funds to our clients' financial advisors, CPAs, and attorneys. And maybe that's a family law attorney for a prenup or a postnup. Maybe it's criminal defense. Maybe it's an estate planning lawyer. Maybe it's corporate counsel to start up a business or a nonprofit. It's really important to create a savvy beneficiary. We never draft a trust that says the trustee shall distribute the funds. We always want to put the beneficiary in a position to say, I would like some money for X, Y, and Z. Can I have some? And then they work with the trustee to figure out, does it make sense given the amount of money in the trust and the other provisions? And then when we're at the point where we're saying, okay, now beneficiary, you can pull a lever and you can pull out a certain amount of cash, that they have the team and the tools to not just wind up in Vegas, to not wind up having just giving the money away, and putting in some, I like a systems approach to everything.
Mhm.
So that first tranche of money that you're going to get, it's maybe 15 to 20%. And then let's wait 4 years. Because if most people give away their inheritance within 3 years, let's wait four. Let the beneficiary learn who they are with money. How did
Yeah.
it go? And meet with a trustee. Hey, you got money for this. You got money for that. You took out your cash. How did it go? How do you feel? Let's look through the well being provisions. Are you okay? Is this working? If it's not working, what can we do? Right? If it is working, what else can we get? What else can we do? Right? In a more excited way. Because this money isn't just piles of money. The money that you earn feels different than the money that you inherit, feels different than money you receive as a gift. And so we
Mhm.
have to acknowledge the emotional impact of receiving an inheritance.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that it's so it's so true. And as you were talking, it was just reminding me of like, yeah, that brings up a whole other set of money stories, right? When you inherit
Mhm.
money, not only is that potentially unexpected, right? Partly, I'm going to say because a lot of families don't actually talk about it,
Yes.
right? Parents don't want their kids to know how much money they have or how much money they
Right.
make. Same with grandparents, right? So if you've grown up in an environment where you don't understand how money works, there
Sure.
what I see on like the money story side is that it can, right? Both of those things that you said can be true. Either like your parents were well off and you felt like they were always trying to buy your love, right? Like and that turns into a wound that is then okay, if you get a bunch of inheritance, guess what's probably going to happen? You're
Yeah.
going to turn around and try to buy a lot of love,
Yes.
right? By giving it away to friends, giving it, like that wound is going just to be amplified versus if we as adults, especially, millennials, Gen X, hopefully, we get some boomers who are doing some healing work too, right? Silent Gen, we've still got our silent Gen, grandparents and whatnot. Um, if we can heal some of those wounds, if we can work on our money stories and heal that, and then pass along a healthier relationship with money to our kids, even if they're so my kids are 13, 11, and 9, right? So we're just starting. They have this sense of safety and stability, right? That was first and
Right.
foremost. And now we're in the stage of, what does money actually mean? What does it do? How do I use it? Right? We're in this new phase. Maybe you have kids who are older teenagers or in their 20s or 30s, right? You can still be a good example to them of healing your relationship with money and having conversations that will help, like you're saying, help set them up so that they can have a healthy relationship with money. And if they have a healthy relationship with money while you're alive, that bodes so much better, right? For the
Absolutely.
inheritance part, you can trust them more, that yeah, if you're, when I do projections for clients, sometimes like, if you stay on this path, what you're doing now, the projection is anywhere, when you're in your 90s, 10 to 40 to $100 million that you're going to have to pass along to something.
Right, and what does that mean? Estate planning is so interesting. I once got a postcard from clients, and it was, I think, from Alabama or Arkansas. And the postcard just said, "We are very angry with you, and we will call you when we return to California." And I was just a nervous wreck. And I had in my notes when they were going to be back, because we had one more meeting scheduled. They had signed their documents, and we needed to talk about title changes and beneficiary designation changes. We need to talk about funding. So we meet up, and I said, "So this postcard, what is this?" And they said, "We are so sorry. We did all this work on our estate plan. Our trust says that the trustee should distribute funds to allow our children to attend the family reunion every year. And we wrote a lot about it in our long form guardianship nomination form as to why this connection to this family is so important, and that it's a big value. But we realized we had not gone for the last few years. So we went to the South in August, where the bugs are as big as baseballs, and it's 100% humidity, and your hair looks terrible. And no matter how much cold water you drink, it just evaporates out of your body. And we didn't realize when we were doing estate planning that what we were doing was we were committing to a course of action during our lives.
Mm.
And we, next year, when we go to the reunion, will be better prepared. And it was so touching because, I'm just doing the work, doing the work, doing the work. And the clients don't always tell you about the impact of the work. And that just made things very, very real for me. That if I'm pushing people to imagine now that your children are doing incredibly well and they're in their mid 30s. And so, what does that mean? And what does that look like? Or, hold my hands and let's walk down that dark tunnel of divorce, addiction, incarceration. What does that look like? What can we do in our documents to address potential future realities? How do we protect everybody? How do we raise everybody up? And so estate planning becomes this kind of weird magical journey through your future. And of course, the goal is I want all my clients to die in Vegas, clutching their last poker chip with a smile on their face. Their loved ones find the documents. Their loved ones, who are all independently wealthy and doing just fantastic, find the documents and say, "Look who they put in charge. I love this person. That person cares so deeply about me and has all the right skills. Look who they chose as guardians. Look what they wrote about how they wanted me to be educated, or about my religious training, or about their list of best friends. So if something happened to them, I could call these people and get their stories. I know these people." It's really touching.
Mhm.
And so everybody says, "Oh, isn't your professional life sad?" No, it's gorgeous. It's so much fun.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, one of my favorite parts, truly, of the planning process, which, it's, like, similar, right? Like, this imagine what it could be like,
Yeah.
right? Imagine all the good. What could this do? And to see people light up and, like, really imagine into those possibilities and then create them.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. And I love how a little bit earlier you mentioned, like really having an interdisciplinary team
Oh, yeah.
to really could because we are different, right? I know enough about estate planning to know when I see things that need to be addressed. That is not my profession, right? And so
And
it's
I know
like,
just enough that I don't want anyone trying to manage their own investments, create their own budget, plan for the future. Even clients who think they are amazing at it,
mhm,
you're still working 60, 70 hours a week. There's no
right.
way that you can do this other full-time job. You can't.
Right. You can't do it justice. Yeah,
No.
same. And so, having the corporate counsel, having a top tier insurance person on the team, right? Like
Yes.
this like holistic financial team always includes the planner and the financial planner, the estate planner, the corporate counsel, the right people, the CPA. If you have a business, like a really good bookkeeper, right? These are all essential pieces of the process because if we can talk to one another, and this is one of the things that I really enjoy about you, um, is that that sense of openness and that sense of collaboration and that sense of like if I see something I don't know, I know it's safe to ask. If you see something
Yes.
you don't know, it's safe to ask, right? It's a collaborative thing. It's not, like there's no competition
No, we don't have to
between.
prove to our clients or anyone else how smart we are.
No.
We have to learn from each other in interdisciplinary study, spot issues, be great on the technicals of our own profession, and mostly be incredible listeners.
Mhm.
And not just say to the client when they say, "Can I have X?" Say yes. We have to say why and tell me more. And I have 47 questions. And now
Mhm.
let's look at all the options. Now, do you still want that first thing you asked for?
Mhm.
Maybe.
Right. Oh,
Maybe.
I love that curiosity.
Yes.
Always lead with curiosity. So,
Yes.
Patricia, thank you so much. I mentioned this to you, but I didn't say it on the podcast yet. I haven't ever had an estate planning attorney on the podcast. My very first podcast was with a business attorney who is amazing, but she does like IP law and different things like that, trademark law, um, not estate planning. And I'm just so thankful that you are who you are and you do what you do. And so if anyone's in California,
Yes.
how can they get a hold of you? Where do they go to say, oh, that's what I need?
Sure. So my website is defontelaw.com. My name is Patricia De Fonte. You can also look me up by Estate Planning with Heart. I am prolific on LinkedIn. And I also have a new YouTube channel because I have a new media director, so that's getting going. Um, the best way to connect with me and my team is through our website. I have a fantastic administrative team. We're really fast in responding, and we work with clients throughout California on Zoom. Me and two lawyers who work with me, we meet with each client for at least 4 hours over 3 meetings, and we take what we do very seriously. We see our clients every 3 years because we're paranoid.
Well, you want that little bit of neurosis in your
Little bit of
attorney, I think.
paranoia. Yeah.
It's good to have. And if, this people listen from all over the country, some places around the world, if you are hearing this and like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I need. You're talking about all the things that I need, and you don't know, like, I don't have any good recommendations, or you had a bad experience with an attorney before, right? And you don't have um, a person, reach out. I would say, like,
Yeah.
you can reach out to me. Patricia, can they reach out to you in case, like, what if they're in Nevada?
Absolutely. Reach out on LinkedIn if you need help outside of California. I have a massive network. I don't have someone everywhere. But most states I have at least one good person. If they're not the one, they'll get you to the one.
Yeah, yes, I have wonderful contacts in Ohio and Arizona. But it's the same. Like, I trust my people in Ohio so much that I know, okay, I don't have someone for Kentucky, but I know she does. So
Right.
you go talk to Jennifer, and then she'll do the same thing. Like, what's your personality? Uh, let's fit you with someone who's going to be a good match and to
Right.
do exactly what you need. So that's the invitation, and of course, everything, that Patricia mentioned will be in the show notes, and if this sparked any questions for you, if there's any follow-up, there's certainly, more episodes that we could do together, Patricia. We didn't talk about all the things we could talk about for sure.
So many
Um,
things to talk about.
there's so many things we could talk about. So for if you're listening and you have questions and you're like, "What about this? What about that?" Right? Send us those questions. You can get those to me at Hannah, Hannah, at expansiveceo.com, and just let us know. Let us know what you're thinking about. Let us know what questions you have so that we can, just keep making podcasts that are actually gonna be helpful and useful and heart-centered and all the things that Expansive CEO podcast is. So thank you, Patricia, for being here. It was a pleasure to talk with you and to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, Hannah, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.